I'm quite confident to say that Showmax as a property is probably going.
They've already drafted the email.
Only because they killed SuperSport, which was a beloved team.
I've heard whispers about us.
Today, we're actually going to be speaking about the biggest news in sports over the last 30 years, and that is the acquisition of MultiChoice by Canal+. Nobile, I'll start with you.
Yep.
I mean, this news has happened for a long time, but the reason we're still talking about it now is because every week it seems like something new has happened. But for the viewer's sake, let's take it all the way back. Why did this acquisition actually happen?
Yeah, so this is a 6-year journey. Canal Plus started this journey in 2020 when they started buying up public shares of MultiChoice, because MultiChoice is a listed company. Eventually in October 2020, they bought about 6.9%, which triggered a public announcement. That's when we first knew that these guys are now interested. At the time, they said there was confidence in the African market, etc. And then eventually, up until 2024, they then had over 30% of MultiChoice. And at that point, it required that they go through a public kind of, they had to make a public offer to purchase the business because their share at that point was too big.
Yeah.
And essentially, they at the time had the largest share. And by going over 30, they essentially would have controlled the business. So, yeah, that's the kind of history of it. It's 6 years summarized into less than 2 minutes. But the reason why they did it, I think, is because it gives Canal Plus something that we don't have globally. It gives them continental dominance over the pay TV market. There is no other broadcaster on the continent that's this big, and the reason why they're doing it really is to compete with the global other gorillas in the world, your Netflixes, your Disneys, etc., who are giant companies. They have giant bank accounts, and they're looking at Africa as the next untapped market, and that's where they wanted to go. So in simple terms, that's why they took over MultiChoice. But another part of the reason is because MultiChoice as a business had been going through so much of a decline over the years, and it was really a failing business by the time that they took over. And they were going into, I think they were in provisional liquidation, or essentially losing more money than they were generating in 2024. And at that point, really, they were quite ripe for the taking as a business.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody that's worked at MultiChoice, I think when Koos Becker actually left the company and they brought it back onto the JSE, or not brought it back, but they took it onto the JSE, I think that marked the beginning of the end, really, because it just felt like, Dad had left the building and he had said, you know what, guys, I've done as best as I can. And they were almost admitting defeat in terms of the streaming capabilities of your Disney Pluses and your Netflixes, etc. And then eventually now Canal Plus.
By the time they became, I think by the time they became I'll say a monopoly, they're the only ones who literally ran sport, from creatives to broadcasters to presenters. Like, everyone wanted to work for MultiChoice, but not just in that industry as well. In football, they were very entrenched, and in other sports as well. So I think perhaps it got too heavy for them, trying to support everyone and everyone being dependent on them. And I don't think it was a good look at the end of the day.
Let's not forget that until the late 70s, early 80s, most of Africa was still colonized. A lot of countries were still undergoing independence. We didn't have streaming or pay television up until the 90s, 95, 96, etc. So for most of the continent, our standards of content and streaming, etc., were very basic. It was linear television and basically whatever you could get. Then comes MultiChoice and SuperSport, and they say, we want the standard to be here, because if we want to broadcast a product, we want it to be of high standard, so that you can then charge the advertisers and all of the money that they need to make this business work.
Yeah. And you can export the product overseas as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because also, again, you're 100% right. If you have an Africa Cup of Nations and it's going to be beamed through the rest of the world, someone locally has to produce that content, and the rest of the world has to find that content of an adequate nature or an adequate product in terms of the viewing experience. So they had to increase the standard, right? And by doing that, they then bought into teams, they bought into leagues, they were sending people to Kenya and Nigeria on courses, etc. MultiChoice is the most important, and SuperSport by extension, is the most important institution to the sports sector in the continent probably ever. There is no institution that has changed the sports sector on the continent more than SuperSport. It employed the most people, it invested the most money, and it improved the product to such an extent that some leagues and some rights holders became wholly dependent on MultiChoice. That was the bread and butter of their income.
Yeah.
And if you look at most of our sports rights holders across the continent, if they have a broadcast agreement with SuperSport, it makes up 60-70% of their revenue. They rely on it. You know, so that's how important they were.
And I think it's also like a very interesting thing, because you're talking about how important they are directly, right? Like direct sponsorship, the kind of money that they would have spent. But they indirectly, they were also employing people because now they've improved, let's say, a football club. The football club must go in and hire a coach, must go and get other people to market the football club. So that money, again, that was stemming from MultiChoice was creating a lot of jobs. And I guess this is why a lot of people used to say, you know, you guys will miss SuperSport when it is gone, because you actually just didn't really grasp how big it all was.
Yeah.
But okay, so I want us to just take a pause there and go back to the viewer and say, okay, what we know now is that MultiChoice was bleeding. Canal Plus over 6+ years had been buying up shares and eventually triggered an actual offer to buy up the entire company. They said, okay, cool, we're gonna buy this company. And that happened last year around September time. So it's been about 6 months. And in these last 6 months, a lot has actually happened. So Mobile, take us through some of the key points of what has happened since Canal Plus took over. We're going to look at both the positives and the negatives.
Yeah, Canal Plus hasn't played around. With the immediate effect after they took over, the first thing that we saw was the introduction of League One, which is the French league, because it hadn't been around on MultiChoice for a while. But I mean, they had the rights, so they could just extend it through to Africa, because people forget that Canal Plus was already active on the continent, right?
Yes.
They were active in Francophone Africa, which is mostly the north of Africa. They weren't really active in sub-Saharan Africa. That was MultiChoice's domain. So they just extended the rights to the rest of the continent.
Yeah, and that announcement was like literally within a week.
Within
a couple of days.
Within a week.
Yeah.
And then they extended that in the other way. You know, the first thing to go was the sale of SuperSport United, which was a football club, which was owned by MultiChoice. It had been owned by MultiChoice since the 90s.
But that happened just before the announcement. But it was quite clear
essentially
that
necessitated by Canal Plus. Yeah. And then there were other smaller things that have happened since then. The rights of the Winter Olympics, which were not bought. Last year, if you remember, there was the IPL rights, which again they were not going to buy, and then there was a public backlash. But I'm quite confident, let me say, according to sources that I've spoken to, that decision was kind of necessitated by the fact that the view was, why are we buying this? There's not enough people that watch it. So, but anyway, so that was another one. And then they've taken some other really big decisions with regards to saying, you cannot, the agreements that they had with all of their suppliers and so on have been frozen. The rights purchases are now being looked into in France, and it's not a South African capability anymore. It's essentially been exported to France. So most of your major decision making, let me say, not major, not most, almost all of your proper decision making is now moved to France. And that's basically meant that if you're a rights holder, or if you have, and to explain this to people who may not know the terminology, a rights holder is anyone who runs a sports competition. If you run a sports competition and you have MultiChoice or Canal Plus as your broadcast partner, you'll be shaking right now, because they're now starting to look at all rights across the board and seeing whether there's value or not, and saying, well, we don't need it.
Right, and I mean, it's a very big point, this rights, right? Because the rights are what MultiChoice and SuperSport, and by extension MultiChoice, spends most of their money on. So Zolani, tell us a little bit about the fan reaction. We saw that fan reaction for the Winter Olympics, but I mean, that was just the start. You know, we're probably going to be in for a bumpy ride going forward. What are you anticipating to see from the fans?
So with the Olympics, it was interesting because it predominantly came from the minority group in the country.
Chief, you can say white people.
So yeah,
It was very PC.
it came from white people a lot, so I don't think it got as much coverage because the majority we didn't care. But I think maybe it's maybe alarm bells, maybe Askaiva, and it's coming. Maybe those are the alarm bells. For now, we just chill it's fine. But I think once something major happens, maybe like rugby or football, then we'll start shaking. Because if you remember the way that, I guess I'll say, Supersport spoiled us in a sense, I think with education now we are figuring out or learning overseas, in the UK, how they pay so much just to watch football. Again, because it was packaged. So I think once we see the hands of Canal Plus and what they decide to do with all the sports rights, the football, whether they package it or separate sports, then we'll understand about this is a ghosted. But for now we're still chilled. I won't lie. We're happy people.
Yeah, and I think let me come to the defense of Canal Plus here because it does sound quite negative the way that we're speaking about it, but it's actually just good business. It's sound business. They came in, they saw the balance sheet, they saw where money was being lost, and they just came in and they said, stop the bleeding. And in order to stop the bleeding, just stop, don't do anything. We need to patch this thing up, and then we need to go. So it is just a good business decision.
And I don't even think we need to defend them. Canal Plus has a very simple ethos. We're a broadcaster, we broadcast content. Everything outside of that is not our business. Why should we, as a broadcaster, be owning competitions, be sponsoring competitions, etc., etc.? It's not our job to do that. Our job is to broadcast content.
So on to this point, where is it going now after this? Because rights is one thing, but like you've just said, MultiChoice and Supersport by extension, they had their hands in a lot of pies.
Yeah, but I think it's important to understand the historical context and why MultiChoice did what they did. They came into an instance where sport was amateur across the board. Yeah. They professionalized rugby through the deal with Sansa. They professionalized the PSL through the deal at the time ABSA was the partner, etc., etc. They essentially professionalized sport, and this is in South Africa alone. But you can take this case study and expand it to the rest of the continent. Yeah. The reason why they did all of the rest is that when they realized that our sport is very amateur, they had to then get involved in the production of content, had to get involved in putting on competitions, etc., because they had to fill out the sports bouquet, right?
I think also they had other properties like Kono Showmax, something we really dearly loved as streamers of this new generation. They also have the betting companies, so those things probably also have to go. What will happen to them?
Yeah, I think there's going to be problems, I'm quite confident to say that Showmax as a property is probably going.
Is it going to be bought, sold, or is they just going to fold?
I think the likelihood is that it's probably going to be, because it's co-owned with Comcast, and that was part of the whole larger agreement, which hasn't really worked out. They're in negotiations now with Comcast, but from what I'm hearing, they're probably going to come to an agreement where MultiChoice has full control of it, and then they're just going to can it because it was losing so much money. I think they want to keep the database and the IP and all of that. They don't want to lose it, but I think they're going to fold it into the business and either launch a Canal Plus streaming app or something to that effect. That's what I think they're going to do. So I think that's going to go. And then there's multiple others. There's the SA20 agreement that they have where they're a shareholder, they're a part shareholder in that. There's the Supersport Park Cricket Stadium, which they have naming rights of, which I don't understand. Still, again, it's like there's so many things that were bought into, which I think they look at now and they think it's really unnecessary for us to still be invested in these things and be paying for them. Because the one thing, and I listened to the media update with the CEO Maxime Sada and David Mignot and everybody else, and the big word that they were using is synergies. It's code names for we're going to save money and we're going to cut spending. And synergies basically means anything that's not making you money or you're spending on unnecessarily has to go. So and they own a big program for 3 years to come up with these synergies, and the synergies are trying to save them over 40 billion rand, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a lot of money.
And the 3 years is because they're not allowed to retrench anyone for those 3 years. So they have to actually find other ways of saving money, correct?
Well, there will be job cuts, I can guarantee you, after
Yeah.
3 years.
Yes.
They will come. But yes, those 3 years are how do we save as much money as possible without job cuts?
Yeah.
And without, because job cuts are also one of their largest cost centers outside of rights.
No, listen, in terms of the job cuts, I believe that Canal Plus is already sitting, they've already drafted the email. It's already scheduled for 3 years' time. As soon as they've clicked send, they're just waiting for it. Because that's probably one of the easiest ways for them to save money. And then another way that they can save money is probably just limiting the amount of production. Because, I mean, Zolani, you attend games all the time. There is a lot of live sport in South Africa.
There's a lot. I think maybe it's due to media as well. Like, I've seen Yannick in the last maybe 5 years of how much sport there actually is. It's like we can't even keep up. Like, heck, I can't even. And I think that's why I enjoy going live now. Like, watching sports on TV, it's, I don't know. But
You've got a very interesting outlook. You've got a very interesting approach to watching sport. You don't watch sport on television, you watch sport live.
Yeah, and I think with what's happened with Canal Plus, maybe that's the opportunity. Like the smaller sports, maybe that's where they need to now start ramping up like live experiences. That's just my take. Because if you can't get it on TV or streaming or any other platforms, go live, chief. The live experience is where it's at right now.
Yeah, and I mean before that, or not before that, but the live experience before Canal Plus was actually being broadcast by SuperSport, whether
100%.
athletics, where netball, no matter what, hockey, they had it, and now it's looking like it's not going to be there anymore.
Yeah, it's not going to be anymore. But again, it's time for the federations and the rights holders to think of other ideas to bring us in.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've got the lay of the land of the last 6 months. So let's just quickly summarize it. What do you think over the last 6 months? What if you had to grade Canal Plus, what would you grade them? And then now, Zolani, I want a grade from you.
No, I think Canal Plus have done an excellent job in 6 months. They've been very clear around what their business objectives are, which is we're going to be a broadcaster. That's very clear and simple. I've always been an advocate of because finding all of that content in one place is crazy business. We were living in
a dream.
We were living in a dream. So, and it was I mean, for the fact that they still have it even now is still amazing. So for me, that's the one. I get the complaints about the Winter Olympics and stuff, but honestly, to be honest, guys, how many of you really watched it? Be honest with yourselves. So that I don't really care about. But yeah, I think Canal Plus have done an excellent job with regards to cutting costs, being very clear in what their messaging is. I think though that their suppliers are really unhappy. And the people who worked in the industry behind the scenes and the scaffolding of the sports sector is very scared of what's coming.
Yeah.
I think people are terrified of the next 6 months, because this first 6 months is for them to see what's happening. Open the bonnet. Hey, kunomlilo nalo kuyashuba.
Yeah.
When things are clear and they've now seen the damage, the fix is going to be brutal.
Yeah. And I mean, talking about suppliers, I've been speaking to fellow agency owners, and it seems as though MultiChoice, SuperSport, or actually MultiChoice, is building an internal agency themselves. So that whole model of you go and you pitch to MultiChoice, you get the work and you execute on it, again, much like the rights conversation, is going to be taken to France, and then that adds a different dynamic. So yeah, it's a tough time, and I think for a lot of people what they need to understand is, to your point, if MultiChoice was responsible for a lot of the capital injection within the industry, the minute that Canal Plus says freeze it, everybody feels it immediately.
Absolutely.
Almost.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's been an interesting one as an agency owner to experience. Zolani, 6 months verdict on Canal Plus.
I'll give them a 4.5 so far, only because
Out of 5, out of 10?
out of 10.
Okay.
Only because they killed SuperSport, which was a beloved team. Now we're down from a big 4 to a big 3, literally, which is killing our football. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what they do further, what they do with the other sports, and then we'll grade further from there.
So you're not feeling Swelele FC?
Not so far. Nah, chef.
But it's very interesting though that Zolani's point is more from a fan experience, a fan perception point of view, and I wonder how much responsibility you place on the rights holders themselves, and in as far as all of that is concerned, because I mean they could have saved it really if they said you're not allowed to change the name, not allowed to do this. No, it could have been saved.
Chief, that's another chat.
Okay, so in the last 6 months, we're all like in agreement. They've done a good job from a corporate perspective,
100%.
but from a taking care of the fans the way that MultiChoice did before, not so much.
Not so much, and I probably from hearing what both of you are saying, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. So there's gonna be more rights cut. There's gonna be more things we're not watching. I'm not sure if there's going to be price increases or anything in between, but I think as fans, we should buckle up for the worst before it gets any better, because the times we lived in before are not the times we're going to be living in the
One
future.
thing I'll say, just to close off, I think there's going to be very exciting times for fans, though, in terms of Canal Plus knows that they've lost the trust of the fans, that the group lost the trust of the fans. They'll be doing everything in their power to regain the trust of the fans by giving you all sorts of nice products, perks, stuff,
I mean, they reintroduced the 4 devices almost immediately as well. So
I think
we're looking forward to see those.
Yeah. So I think you're right, Ngobile. Like they are definitely going to introduce things that we thought we weren't going to get anymore. And like I said, those 4 device limit was a big thing.
I've heard whispers about a sports package.
A sports-only package.
I've heard whispers about a sports.
Well, here you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. A sports-only package. Whispers are going into cash and sport over here. Okay, so we're all in agreement about the first 6 months. Let's talk about what you're just saying now, Zolani, about the fact that we know we are in for a tough time and a rocky time. So what is it going to look like in the future? You and I debate this quite often about the timeline. I think we're in for a rocky time for at least the next 5 years as a sports industry. When you are a bit more optimistic in saying about 2 years.
I think they'll be done with it quickly.
Okay.
I don't think it'll take a long time. So this is my prediction of the timeline. I think by the end of this year, 2026, we'll have a very clear idea of what Canal Plus wants to do in terms of which rights they're not prioritizing, which rights they do prioritize, and what they want to broadcast and what not. I think they'll be done at least with getting rid of the dead weight according to their business. So I think they'll be done with regards to that. And I think within this year as well, they will push a lot of new measures in place to try and keep fans. So I think it will take them a year after that to properly establish what the roadmap is for Canal Plus going into the future. This is what I think Canal Plus is trying to do. They want to have a one-stop streamer.
Yeah.
One-stop shop. So your Netflix, HBO, and these others, Warner Brothers, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And have it all integrated into one as a streaming app. But they know they can't do that in Africa yet. So I think that they'll keep the core kind of DStv customer who still uses a set-top box, etc., while they wait for the connectivity aspect of the rest of the continent to catch up. But in the future, I think that's what they really want to do, is become a streamer app and have everything all in one, so that you can watch everything all in one on the continent. But the technology isn't there yet on the continent in order for them to do that.
Yeah.
But I think it'll take them because another thing that people don't realize is that the other business that Canal Plus announced that people didn't know existed was a fiber to the home business. Canal Plus is also heavily involved in fiber internet, and they're building that out across the continent. Don't be surprised if they apply for a license in South Africa to
and then have like almost like a package
fiber
deal.
Yeah, so you get Canal Plus fiber, you get discounted Canal Plus content, and then you get Netflix and all of your other subscriptions all in one, and you pay for it on one platform.
Beyond the fans and the sports we're getting, what I'm also concerned about is where the industry is going from a creative and businesses. Like, what happens to all the creatives? Everybody was getting, all the agencies, everybody was getting gigs from this one monopoly. And I think instead of being concerned, I think it's an opportunity. Opportunity for everyone, because now we can actually have more players. As we say, SuperSport or MultiChoice has put the bar here. Everybody has seen it. You probably worked with them at some point. You know where the bar is. Now it's time for everybody just to take it and run with it. I think that's the opportunity here for everyone. Like, the industry is, from here, it's just going to grow, not even shrink. That's what I think.
And I think it's a phenomenal point, because actually we're in a new era that we've never seen in the past 30 years. At least, and on the African continent, we've never seen it. Nobile, we've got some theories. We're watching a couple of players in the sports industry, and we're saying, hey, guys, did you see the news that just dropped over here? Talk to us about some of that. Like, what do you think is going to happen in the future in the industry?
Yeah, I think there's some interesting players who have started to position themselves in place in ways to take advantage of where MultiChoice is stepping away from. If a few of us remember the story of the Doozy Canoe Marathon, there was I forgot what's his name was, Busiso. He was a paddler. He won the Doozy Canoe Marathon very many years ago. A lot of us forgot about the Doozy. We don't even watch it on TV. It's now broadcast and packaged by Mega Pro and Mega Live. I think is going to be a big player in the sports sector, at least in South Africa. But I know for a fact that they also want to be doing stuff across the continent. They've signed an interesting deal with an Indian company that is a very big player in the competition space. I can really foresee them. They started to do the Doozy Canoe Marathon. I would not be surprised if they do some sorts of deals with other major rights holders. Athletics, for example, which has had some troubles. Although Athletics South Africa has signed a long-term deal with MultiChoice, I don't know if Canal Plus is going to keep Athletics because of all of the drama and the issues that happened there. So after this current deal is expired, they could definitely come on. But the big one is, I'm hearing some discussions around a streaming company that SA Rugby is going to launch.
Oh wow!
Where the aim is to, alongside their pay TV and free-to-air rights, also have a dedicated streaming service which is accessible globally. And I'm hearing that there's some interesting conversations happening already with regards to Mega Pro potentially commercializing and also producing.
So you're basically saying that Saru is looking to kind of copy the model that the Premier League's just announced, where
Formula One TV, Premier League, etc.
Premier League Plus, so we can get it from Saru. This is also interesting because I think you you went a little bit viral last week for your school sports video. And I think for me, when I look at the whole ecosystem, it makes sense, this thing that you're speaking about, because ultimately, if you're going to have a streamer like that, you need stories that are going to feed it. And we did a story once on the Springbok, the schoolboy to Springbok pipeline. If you can capture Andre Pollard, or the next Andre Pollard rather, from his time at Paarl all the way till he wins a World Cup, Chief, I'm not going to lie, you've got me. You know what I mean? I'm paying you the money.
If every rights holder knows that they're in a content game now. Every rights holder has to be highly invested in and this is the last part, actually, I think, of where I think this is going to go, is that we're going to now also start seeing individual rights holders considering their options with regards to their own individual streaming platforms. Because if you're not going to get 60% of your revenue from MultiChoice, create your own content, stream your own content, and then sell advertising to death. And it creates opportunities for SABC, ETV, Sportybet, all of these other kind of peripheral, maybe not say, let's not say peripheral as though they're really small. But they haven't been as big as MultiChoice. But now they've got a really big chance of getting those sports rights and potentially becoming a much bigger player in our sports ecosystem than they have been before. Plus also your individual sports teams. I mean, for teams not to have a YouTube channel and all of this in 2026.
I mean, listen, suffering. We're talking about Saru right now. I'm pretty confident Cricket South Africa is going to go in the same direction. But let's talk about the big elephant in the room, which is the biggest sporting code in the country, Chief, the PSL. What must happen?
As you say, not elephant, gorilla. You saw Mahopo over the weekend. Hey, as Nobile said, Content. I think from the chats I've seen online, it's about time, Chief, that the PSL, as a rights holder, as an organization, step up their content. MultiChoice or SuperSport, don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years with the deal. As Mobile said, if they're getting 60% of their funding or money from that deal, it might be cut. So what do you do next? It's going to be time, and again, that creates more job opportunities for other people in the industry to step in and say, we can do this. We can help you tell your story because it's such a beautiful big story in the country.
And it's a very interesting intersection. I find the timing of it fascinating. Dr. Irvin Khoza is aging. Like, that's just a fact. But he has been absolutely critical to building the league to what it is now. They're celebrating 30 years this year, essentially. Mobile, where do you see the PSL going? Because from just like what Zolani is saying, that is the chatter online. But that brings in governance questions, sponsorship questions, and a complete restructuring, actually. Where do you see it happening?
The PSL is at a massive paradox in their history at the moment. Dr. Khoza is I mean, he's a hugely important figure in South African football. They asked him to stay on at the last elections. I know I'm quite confident in the fact that he was considering retiring. They asked him to stay on so that he could, for one, get the Betway deal over the line in terms of the negotiation.
But interestingly, Betway took over from DStv, which also left probably because of Canal Plus.
But also, I don't know if he'll get to the next right cycle for the PSL, which is 2028 to 2029. But I mean, if there hasn't already started to be conversation with regards to how do we extend this agreement, etc., because it's hugely important for the PSL. The PSL's revenue at the moment is somewhere around 1.2, 1.4 billion rand annually. Over 630 million of that comes out of MultiChoice.
Jeez.
Close to 7 actually, if you consider the DStv Disky Challenge as well. So and then also the referees, which by extension participate in the PSL, but that money is paid to SAFA for Showmax. So it's a huge amount of money. And the other problems for the PSL is that essentially the production of the PSL content has wholly been exported into the MultiChoice business or an agency that works out of the Houghton area called Levergy, who essentially produce most of the stills and the graphics, not just in the PSL, but for PSL competitions like the Nedbank Cup, etc. So how do you handle that? The second is even for something like the PSL website, again, which sits and is managed in the MultiChoice universe. How do you handle that? Essentially, they've exported their content responsibility to MultiChoice. But if Canal Plus now says, we are a broadcaster, guys, we're not a content producer, we are a broadcaster, figure yourselves out, it makes the PSL have to, within the next 2 years, really ramp up their content production, whether they have an in-house agency or whatever it is, in order to tell the PSL story, because the PSL at the moment doesn't manage its own story in terms of the public perception.
I mean, I guess now I'm gonna throw us a little bit of a controversial one. Who do we see coming in and really being the steward of the PSL to take it into the next era? Because to be fair, that's what we're saying here. It has to enter the new era, a storytelling era, a content era, but it also needs the foundational elements, the scaffolding behind the scenes, and it needs somebody who can do that. So who do you foresee taking up that seat? Me personally, I just know that there's a former SuperSport United CEO that doesn't have a job right now.
Stan won't do it. Stan won't do it, and he's said as much. I think he's much happier in an administrative capacity. But to be honest, in terms of who the candidates are, I mean, we've had a temporary CEO for 10 years now.
Ridiculous.
who is very familiar with what happens in the league, senior figure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if she just gets elevated to chairman of the league, and you get a
Succession.
you get someone kind of stepping into her role. That makes sense.
Yeah.
From a continuity point of view, relationship point of view, respect amongst the board of governors, etc., etc. But in terms of an outside voice, a younger voice from within the ranks of the second generation of PSL owner, sons, daughters, etc., etc. I know there's some very capable people, but I also know there's some worrying kind of figures in and around the PSL leadership structures, not necessarily PSL leadership structures, but within the families of the various teams. So that one is very difficult to try and figure out. I think the Mato Madlala one is kind of more the most sensible, easy option.
Yeah. Zoran?
I'm not chief. I don't even know these guys. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But again, it is worrying if like the only chairman we've ever known like growing up has been Dr. Ivan Khoza. This only one.
Shit, when you say it like that, it's like it hits
only
home.
one in
Actually.
his home. And to the point of Kobus Becker when he left, what happened with Thingy?
Yeah, with MultiChoice.
With MultiChoice. So it's like almost like when Dr. Khoza is gone, what happens with the PSL?
Listen, I'm not gonna lie. I've said to you guys before, I'd love to see Jessica Mutawung take on a senior role at either SAFA or the PSL, because I just feel like Kaizer Chiefs is a machine that kind of runs itself. Her father built it. I'd love to see Jessica carve out a name for herself in something that isn't in the shadow of her father's efforts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though it's very clear what she's done there. You know what I'm saying? Like you can see, but she's helped commercialize Kaizer Chiefs. I mean, they are literally the very mark of the league. But
Jessica, we're sorry.
but to see what she could do at the PSL, I think for me, I'd be very interested in something like that.
Yeah, I think, but I think we always need to contextualize this thing, and I think people forget. Sport in South Africa is quite young, really. Professional sport in South Africa is quite young. It's only about 35, 30 some.
30 years.
PSL is 30 years now.
Yeah.
It's quite
30
young.
years. Yeah.
There's a lot of room to grow, and it's like when you have a 30-year-old who has been living in your household, hasn't really figured out life, but then they start to figure out, okay, this is my place in the world, this is how I make my stamp on things, etc., etc. I have to grow up in some places, etc., etc. The PSL is going through that, it's undergone through the puberty, it's gone through the maturity stage, and it's now becoming a young adult in the global sphere of sport. And I think the PSL will be fine because, again, it's also such a big institution that it can't be allowed to fail. So I don't think that the industry will allow the PSL to fail because there's too many people dependent on it. And also, the next frontier for the PSL is to export itself to the rest of the world. The PSL is an excellent product. It trends continuously. Let me not say the PSL, South African football is an excellent product. It exports itself continuously to the world through memes and so on and so on. The custodians of the PSL and SAFA and South African football as a whole then have to take that same mindset and export it to the rest of the world and not kind of shackle it to South Africa. So I think there's a lot of positives to look out for if we make the right decisions and if we look future focused in terms of our thinking.
And I must say that last part about the fact that the PSL must get exported, I've long said that Idiski is a style of football that is so unique to South Africa. Yes, of course, you've got your samba, joga bonito in Brazil and all these different styles, but Idiski is so unique to us, and the rest of the world is actually crying out for that style of football. Like, gone are the days when players used to take each other on. It's all these tiki-taka, too much tactics, and people just want to feel again. And I think inside the PSL, people feel all the time.
No, 100%. To your point, even Brazilians are crying now that Joga Bonito is dead. So we really are the last place probably we still enjoy our football. Heck, you see over the weekend we had the derby, like the biggest thing on the continent. So yeah, I think to Momilo's point, there's very much a lot of positives that we can still look out for the PSL.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here first. Canal Plus has come in and changed the game. They've done a really good job in terms of corporate structuring in the first 6 months, but they've left the fans feeling a little bit jittery and a little bit scared, together with the actual sports industry. But this is just what's going to happen as we go through a massive transition over the last 30 years. And not just with MultiChoice, but also unions such as SARU, CSA, and most importantly, because it's the biggest sporting code in the country, the PSL. We will wait to see what happens next, and we will catch you guys next time on the 22 Hours podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm watching, like, manj. Click it, manj.
Wow.
Okay, good.
Yup.
See you guys next time.